Hi guys, welcome back to Plots and Reviews. I'm your host Byeee. I know I've been gone for a little while, but I had to pop back in and make this video because today we'll be discussing 𝗙𝗃 by Trent Jamieson. So we're just going to start off by looking at why it is now officially my favorite book of the year. Then I'm going to give you a very basic summary as to what happens if you don't want spoilers, and then we are going to just fly into spoiler territory because this book deserves all the spoilers that you can share, just because sharing is caring. That being said, I am really excited and I do recommend that you get this book because it's incredible, and I will be reading a little of the notes that I took along the way. So sit back, enjoy, and let's jump right into it. So for the basic overview, 𝗙𝗃 is written by Trent Jamieson. It is labeled by me as a post-apocalyptic vampire fantasy. Do with that what you will. I gave this book a 5+ out of 5. Now this means that this book got bonus points for being so awesome. Apparently it was first released in 2015 but remained in Australia. And I will have to say, if you are watching from Australia and you never share this with the rest of us, what kind of person are you? What kind of person are you? Anyway, Eri1 Books republished it. It came out on the 23rd of August and it is now available for you to consume and delight in. Why is it my new fave? So my fave of the year prior to this, it was sort of a tight battle between Book of Night by Holly Black and Not Good for Maidens by Toni Bovalino. But the interesting thing about Not Good for Maidens is that although I scored it lower than Book of Night because the characters in Not Good for Maidens just really upset my soul, although I scored it lower than Book of Night, there were a lot of elements in it that I absolutely adored. And one of it was just how top-notch, gory, and just wicked and vile the goblins were. And I admired the grit of the author to do that. Like, that was brilliant. So Not Good for Maidens holds back no punches, except in the acceptance of the uselessness of one of the main characters. That really disappointed me because I'm like, I would have liked it if she had to face more damning results for her actions, because she was just dumb, like really upsetting dumb. And given how well the book is written in just how wicked the goblins can be, the descriptions of people being eaten and consumed in the market, the bones and the body parts that you find, the descriptions of the attacks, it's very gruesome and it's gory and it's very well written. And I expected the author to treat the main character a bit more ruthlessly than she did, because that may have been another 5+ out of 5. But as it was, I think I gave it like a 4.7 or something. It was very good, but it could have been devastating. It could have been devastating. Another book that I really enjoyed that was battling for position, recently read, was Book of Night. Again, I loved how mature Book of Night was. I do know that some people didn't really like it, expecting, I guess, more of a young adult tone towards the book. But I loved how gruesome it was. I loved how gory it was. And both of those books, by the way, Book of Night and Not Good for Maidens, have a lot of gore. And if you're not into violence at all, or blood, or like descriptions of people being eaten, I wouldn't recommend you approach either of those two books, because it wouldn't be fair for you and it wouldn't be fair for the author and, you know, the people who appreciate the book. In that same vein, right, we have 𝗙𝗃. And 𝗙𝗃 managed to cover a lot of bases that I wanted from not good for maidens, that I got a certain level of maturity that I got in Book of Night, and yet the main character is relatively young in 𝗙𝗃. He's like, I'm guessing like 15, 16, maybe max 17. So all of that considered, I was pleasantly surprised at how much gravitas the story has. But this is not to say that that child isn't an idiot. Like, oh my gosh. Now that we've gotten my faves sort of out of the way, let us go into a basic overview of what 𝗙𝗃 is about. In essence, 𝗙𝗃 follows this young boy named Mark. And as the story unfolds, we realize that Mark is actually a familiar, and his vampire master is called 𝗙𝗃. Now, 𝗙𝗃 and Mark live in a small town that houses 4 other vampires. And these vampires, they have their own 𝗙𝗃s and their own allegiances, but they also have some kind of feud amongst themselves. And this all has to do with the fact that they left the city, right? And they were sort of relegated to this Midlands, mid-level town that none of them really wanted to be in because the city is so awesome. So we're following Mark, and Mark wakes up every morning, and the moment he like opens his eyes, he's like, what can I do to unsubscribe from life today? What can I do? And then he proceeds to do it because it's incredible. I'm amazed this child is still alive. Like, how? So Mark gets into a lot of fights, unnecessary fights with other 𝗙𝗃s. He's always protected by his master from the other masters and basically from the consequences of his actions. He's very helpful though. So he's always like cleaning the gutters in the town that need cleaning, fixing fences, mending things, ensuring that the house is somewhat clean because... Anyway, ensuring that the house is somewhat clean, cooking occasionally. But he's very free-spirited. He's very irrepressible. And is that the word? That's not the word. The word is irreverent. So he's very irreverent. He disobeys almost everything he can possibly disobey and still be alive. But nevertheless, he's nearing the age where he will no longer be a 𝗙𝗃. And I guess as he's maturing, he would then either become a master, right? The possibilities. Maybe go work in the city, go work somewhere else, or stay in the town. But usually they say it's very hard for a 𝗙𝗃 to remain next or close to his master because there's still an impulse to want to help out the master, but then the master doesn't really have any more protection or obligation towards you. So it's very tricky. Yeah. How do you get a 𝗙𝗃? So 𝗙𝗃s are in essence children that have been kidnapped from their human parents when they were very young and taken to either the creche in the city, the academy, I think also in the city, or they're just taken randomly and raised by one of the masters to be helpful. 𝗙𝗃s are usually boys. They aren't any 𝗙 girls, I believe, except in like there's this random instance of 𝗙 girls being mentioned. And this is because apparently vampires are all men, because the women apparently can't take the heat because they get burnt out or they become crooked and deformed in some way, and I guess we don't survive, which is sad and sucky, but at least the author answers that bit. So Mark is aging out. He's still very wild. He has about another year before he needs to get another profession because 𝗙𝗃 is going to be like, you're too old, bye-bye. And a series of things start to happen around him. So he now has to figure out a way of keeping alive, keeping his choices sort of open, right? And transition well. And when I say he, I mean 𝗙𝗃 is really trying to help him realize that he needs to do this. So Mark is attacked by a random hunter. He's then taken into the city where he's supposed to take it as an opportunity to learn. That goes horribly wrong. He comes back and again, he's given more opportunities to learn. He has a crush on a girl in the village. He has a little apprentice that comes that he needs to teach. And there are several losses along the way that really toughen him up and show us that over the years, he actually has learned something from Dean. But even so, it's not enough to keep him in line, and a fatal flaw causes it all to go to hell and back. And it is painful. It is very painful. So in essence, Mark needs to fend for himself. He needs to go all out, and he pulls out all of the badassery that we only heard mention about. I mean, except him just wanting to die. And he shows us some real skill. So I appreciated that journey during the book. You know, us finally being able to see what Mark can do. And he can do. So what were my general thoughts? Overall, I loved this book. I stayed up and I read it in one sitting. I stayed up and I had to finish it before I slept because it was so good. The journey was so captivating and compelling. Mark is such he's so wild. He's so wild, and part of you just wants him to become tamed, and the other part of you just keeps watching out for him to see how long he'll stay alive. And I have a feeling that this is what made Dane keep him around so long and didn't, get rid of him. Because of that battle that you feel when you're following Mark. It's like, oh my gosh, this child is going to die. Someone please put this child out of its misery. And then on the same hand, you're like, let's indulge him and see what he'll do next. The book is also filled of amazing quotes. I am going to link all of that on my website so you can have a look at the quotes that I found very interesting. But you could basically highlight most of the book and you'll be fine. I need to let this author know that, I can't go around highlighting a whole book because it's, pointless. But there were so many good quotes, so many good observations about life and about how we view life and how we should view life. And it's all such an amazing learning lesson, not only for Mark, but for us, that I resonated with it amazingly. I know I'm using a lot of amazing, but tough love. I wouldn't change a single thing about the book. Nothing to change. Everything is so well explained, so well detailed. And it's really one of those stories where the horror keeps mounting. You see things consistently going wrong, and you know it will only get worse. I thought the amount of people I'm like, oh my God, this person's gonna die, and then Mark is gonna lose it. This person is gonna die. This person's gonna die. A lot of people do die, but it's that kind of situation where you're just there watching, and things are so intense and happening so quickly, but yet so slowly. And Mark is changing, maturing, but not learning how you need him to learn. Obey some orders, child. Anyway, so it's amazing. It's a great book. My reviews are out there. You can read and ask me any questions. And this was the end if you don't want spoilers. Now, let's enter into spoiler territory. We are now entering spoiler territory. Stories will be discussed. Actions will be discussed. The reasoning or lack thereof will also be discussed. You've been warned. Okay, to be fair, I don't really want to do too much in spoiler territory because I want you guys to really experience the story, and I will recommend that you go read it because the writing is so good. The writing is so good. But there are a few things that I found especially brilliant about how the book is organized. So the book starts off very slowly. So much so that the first couple pages, I had actually started it and I had paused before I picked it back up, but I think I was on page 2. And it's such a journey that it reminded me of The Witching Year by Alexis Henderson, in that the world slowly opens up. And that's also All the Murmuring Bones, where the world slowly opens up and you begin to realize that there is so much more than you knew or than you realized going on with this story. And here, It's, as I mentioned, it's like post-apocalypse, right? So the world as we know it with cell phones and TVs and screens and so on has ended. Somehow creatures that were living in the shadows, they overtake us during a war, and I guess there's some disease, and they end up somewhat creating some order in the planet and saving human beings. So we are now in this world where monsters are real, where there are a lot of dangers running around, including like little freaky cold children, which are like little vampire kids. You have trolls that live under bridges. You have a host of monsters that are roaming, and vampires essentially keep them away from us because at the end of the day, we're like vampire food, right? So they do their best to take care of us. And in this world, naturally, there's some level of organization of the masters. Again, one of the things that I appreciated is that we got to sample the stories of the masters that live in the town that Mark lives in, but the author doesn't bog you down in it. He gives you just enough to like satisfy your palate, and to make you accept certain things and allow the story to flow. So that was also nice. I also have like their stories available if you want to read like my summaries of it. Another thing that was very well done is the fact that we really get a sense of this world from the perspective of flies on Mark's shoulders. So in a way, we understand some of Mark's motivations, but we're really just spectators who are riding his shoulder more than anyone else's. So a lot of the things aren't fully described, aren't fully understood, but it's understood. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just brilliant writing. So the pacing, the backstory of the characters, including the other day boys, I liked it. It was well done. The way the story and the world opens up, lovely. The amount of insights into life and how we should deal with life, how we should deal with challenges, the things that we should run from and the things that we shouldn't run from. Seeing bravery, the difference between, courage, stupidity, youth, and age, and there's so many contrasts of it. And even though we don't have a day girl per se, we do have, I want to say, strong representations of females, like strong female representations, and it's in a way that covers a few different bases, but they're all interesting people. Like, I can read a spin-off of almost any of these people and be interested in what happened in their lives or what is happening in their lives. Finally, the descriptions of the elder vampires, loved it. Beautiful. The description of the reckoning and Mark going wild and savage, loved it. Delicious. It's so good. Okay, so remember how I told you that Mark is forever unsubscribing for life, right? From like trying to unsubscribe from life. So he ends up going to the city. He's attacked by a hunter because he goes somewhere that he shouldn't go, and the hunter almost kills him. And his master is like arch enemy that lives in the city. It's like, this kid is going to be the death of everyone. I hate him. Get rid of him. And Dane, who is Mark's master, is like, no, he's cool, blah, blah, blah. So he gets attacked. And as a result, like, of course, Dane is somewhat embarrassed, right? But then things sting over. And everybody in the town is still living their lives. So Dane is like, let's go to the city. Let's go to the city because there are things I need to do. They get to the city. And Dane disappears for like 2 days, and Mark is told to stay in the room. So Dane basically says, dude, if you leave the room, you're going to be in so much trouble. You are going to be like an embarrassment to me because I'm supposed to be the one advising you. It's going to be mad dangerous. Do not, under any circumstances, leave this room. I don't know why Dane bothered to do that. Dane should have just been like, Mark, you know what? I know you want to die, so please go outside, run out of the city when you're not supposed to, and die. He didn't say that, so naturally Mark went out to the city, met some other like ex-day boys who are now grown, and goes wild. And then when he's in trouble, he's like, oh, I know it's been 3 days, but my master is waiting on me. Now Dane can't come, so Egan, who is like Dane's enemy in the town, he comes. And Mark is like, what the hell? And they go down to meet like the elder vampires, because the elder vampires have heard about this Mark child, and they're like, what waste is this? We must see it with our own eyes. To be fair, I do think the elder vampires are extremely bored, because these people are like rotting down in like the crypts of the crypts of the crypts of the city. Apparently they can like hear everything on the whispers, so they've heard the whispers of Mark. They're very, very, very old. And it's so dark you can't even see it. And also down there, you have the kids, the day boys, who were offered the opportunity to be masters. They're like in cages down there and turning and using that little vampire voice. You know, the one that's like, come, let me just have a little bit of your blood. Blah, 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 blah. Let me just have some blood. I will be gentle. But not really. So yeah, they're also down there with these old vampires who I guess can easily control them. So Mark ends up going down there because he disobeyed the order of Dane, right? Dane is now was going crazy because he's like, oh my God, Mark ran away. He's so close to leaving. I know he does this to me. I can't believe he did that to me. And Egan, who is Dane's little enemy, vampire enemy, is there with him. So when they get there, for some reason, these elder vampires who are incredibly bored, I kid you not, I probably would be too at this point, you know, and they're just there liming with each other. All of the coffins are piled on each other, in each other, around each other, just one blob of old vampires waiting with not much to do. So Mark sparks a little something in them, and they decide not to punish him really and just sends him back home. So he goes back home. Naturally, Egan like threatens him. He gets home. He apologizes to Dane. Dane is very upset, of course. But things start going somewhat back to normal. And then he's given, because remember, he's aging out, right? So he's sent an apprentice. And this little boy is like really on the dots, his like pins and points with what he's supposed to be doing. He's from the creche, so he's like elite day boy, you know. He's like well-trained day boy. He's like private school day boy, you know. And the other day boys in the town and the people of the town like this little boy, Tom. But that doesn't last because these vampires are petty as hell. And so not only do they remove Tom, but they also remove Mark's crush. So naturally, Mark is like heartbroken that this has happened, and he spirals into depression. In the meantime, Dane, of course, has had to deal with the consequences of Mark's actions to a point, and he's not really sure what to offer Mark, right? There is also a visit of like auditors who appear because there's this explosion of the train. Whatever, no one cares. But we care. But it's just one of those details in the book that you don't really need to get into. But they also appear, and they're meaningful like towards the end, because they offer another possibility to Mark as to what he can do, which is become an auditor, travel around, keeping peace, keeping laws set up by the vampires, and ensuring that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Petty ass vampires decide that, you know what? You are not getting Tom. We just sent him to mess with you, Dane. And Mark, we're taking him back. So they took him back, and they take Anne, who is like Mark's crush. She was like really cool, like a little Tom girl kind of thing, but she played music beautifully. And in this world, vampires are obsessed with music, with music, sun, and fire, because they worship the sun. They have like sun churches. And so music, water, fire, and the sun. You know, they're fascinated by these things. And they're the types that, yes, they will burn in the sun, so they can't go out in the sun. Stake through the heart kills them. There are a lot of classic vampire features in it that you can like appreciate. Anyway, so they take it back. He spirals into depression. And one of the day boys that he was really good with, they decide to go for a walk a day, right? So Mark is like, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. The day boy's like, let's go to this meeting. He's like, ugh. So they're walking. It's deer hunting season. Now, the moment I heard it was deer hunting season, I'm like, somebody's going to die. So the kid gets killed. Now, this guy is Dane's vampire enemy's day boy that he adores, because Grove, his name is Grove. Grove is like this, I guess, the cute kid next door that everyone wants to have something to do with, you know, that everyone admires. He gets shot. And Egan loses it. So he goes after the guy, the human who shot Egan, right? Although he's like, I just saw a deer, I didn't mean to shoot him. He got killed. And then he goes after Mark, because he's like, it was your stupidity that caused Grove to die. No. Yes. Mark is very stupid, right? Mark makes terrible choices. Mark is suicidal. Mark wakes up every single day and decides that I will try to do everything I can so I can be unalived, so I can unsubscribe from life. He does that. He does. I won't lie. But this death was not his fault. Like Egan, no. Like, he didn't even want to go to this place. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to have it. He was the one that's like, let's hurry up. He didn't want to do this. Okay, so it really was not his fault. But of course, Egan blames him. And there is this massive fight between Egan and Dane, because Dane is protecting Mark. So this is all coming to a close, right? Mark is hiding out in his house, protected by Dane. Egan is just out to kill Mark. The other vampires in the town are just waiting to see who is going to win, to see whose side they're going to take. Although they also never liked Mark, so this is just a chance to get rid of Mark. You can't blame them. And then somehow Egan manages to kill Dane. Yes. He kills Dane by burning him. And Mark loses his shites. Mark goes psycho. Mark goes Buffy the Vampire Slayer on them. He goes Buffy the Vampire Slayer / Spike / Angel on these people. If you don't know this reference, I'm so sorry. Here's some pictures. There they are, these people. You can like Google search image search them. Anyway, so he goes psycho on them, right? And so he kills the day boys at first to get into the houses. He kills them. He kills these people. And then he's able to get part of his vengeance against Egan. But remember, Mark is still aging out of being a day boy. His master is gone. He has no one in town really to protect him. Nothing. But then this is where I come back and I say that those old bored vampire people, they like him because they actually send an emissary to come visit him to tell him that 5 new vampires should be coming to the town soon. So he needs to decide what he's going to do to stay alive. If that's not love, I don't know what is. And they tell him that so that he can prepare himself to leave, right? And so he ends up leaving with the auditors that come back, and he ends up leaving with them, right? And now Mark is entering, like, he has lost it. He's attacked these people, and I think he still wants some level of revenge. One of the underlying stories is that there's some sort of like insurgents going on with humans trying to kill vampires and take back the world, but it's not working very well. And then the hunter that attacked Mark had this spiral on his hand, which is what Mark sees in the room that he's waiting for with his master when he was in the city. He sees that, and that is what causes him to run away, because he's like, what the hell, they're coming for me, oh my god, and he runs. But we don't get the resolution of this as yet. So I want to know if there is a book 2, please. And honestly, I'm going to wrap up there because I don't want to say anymore. I know I promised spoilers and there were some spoilers there, but if you want more spoilers, you can probably just like message me and I'll tell you more. But please go read the book. Read the book. It's worth it. It's very interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting down with me again today. I hope to see you again next time. In the meantime, take care. Have a fabulous day, week, month, and see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.